Jake Carter tightened his grip on the rifle as he peered over the crumbling wall. The wind carried the acrid smell of smoke and burning metal, mixing with the faint cries of the wounded. His eyes scanned the horizon, searching for any sign of movement. Beyond the makeshift barricade stretched fields of ash and debris, remnants of what was once a thriving colony. Now it was a graveyard. The Valith were out there somewhere, hidden in the darkness. Their machines didn't sleep, and they never stopped coming. Jake knew this all too well. For weeks, his small group of survivors had been fighting off wave after wave of attacks. Each battle left them weaker, their numbers thinner. Supplies were running dangerously low, and morale was at an all-time low. It felt like they were holding on by a thread, one that could snap at any moment. Behind him, Emma Hart crouched beside a damaged generator, her hands smeared with grease and dirt. She worked quickly, trying to patch up the power supply for the colony's failing defenses. Her blonde hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, strands sticking to her sweaty face. "Jake," she called out, her voice strained, "we're not going to last much longer if we don't get this working." He glanced back at her, his expression grim. "Keep at it, Emma. We need those turrets online." His tone was firm, but lacked its usual confidence. Even Jake couldn't deny how dire things had become. He turned his attention back to the empty field ahead, wondering when or if the next attack would come. Nearby, Ryan Cole leaned against a broken piece of concrete, polishing a knife with slow, deliberate strokes. His dark hair was unkempt, and his face bore the marks of exhaustion. Ryan had been part of the colony since its early days, but now he seemed more detached than ever. "You really think patching up that old thing is going to make a difference?" he asked, nodding toward the generator. "We're done for, Jake. You know it as well as I do." "Shut it, Ryan," Jake snapped, though there was little heat behind his words. Deep down, he feared Ryan might be right, but giving up wasn't an option, not yet. Not while people still depended on him. Emma sighed, wiping her hands on her jeans. "If we lose power completely, the perimeter sensors will go offline. Without them, we won't see the Valith coming until it's too late." Her voice wavered slightly, betraying her fear. Despite everything, she refused to give up. She stood up and grabbed a wrench, heading back to work. The silence between them was heavy, interrupted only by the distant hum of machinery and the occasional groan of the injured being treated inside the medical tent. Jake hated this feeling, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He wasn't a leader by choice. Circumstances had forced him into the role. Yet here he was, trying to hold together what remained of humanity's foothold on Solus Prime. As night fell, the temperature dropped sharply. The cold seeped through Jake's jacket, making him shiver. He adjusted his position, keeping his rifle steady. The stars above offered no comfort, just a reminder of how far they were from home. Earth felt like a distant memory, a place none of them might ever see again. Suddenly, Emma froze, her head snapping up. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, her eyes wide with alarm. Jake listened intently, his heart pounding. At first, there was nothing but the usual sounds of the night. Then came the faintest buzz of mechanical worry that grew louder with each passing second. His stomach sank. "They're here," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Ryan pushed himself off the concrete slab, gripping his knife tightly. "How many?" "I don't know," Jake admitted, scanning the darkness, "but they're close." Emma scrambled to finish her repairs, her movements frantic. Sparks flew as she connected the final wires. With a loud click, the generator roared to life, bathing the area in dim light. The motion-activated turrets whirred to attention, their barrels swiveling toward the approaching threat. From the shadows emerged the Valith towering metallic constructs with glowing red eyes. They moved with eerie precision, their limbs clicking and clanking as they advanced. There were dozens of them, maybe more. Jake swallowed hard, raising his rifle. This was it, the moment they'd been dreading. "Stay sharp," he shouted, firing the first shot. The bullet struck one of the machines, causing it to stagger momentarily before continuing forward. More shots rang out as the defenders opened fire, the turrets joining the barrage. Explosions lit up the night as shells collided with the vit, sending shards of metal flying in every direction. For a brief moment, it seemed like they might hold their ground, but the Valith kept coming, relentless and unyielding. One of the turrets overheated and shut down, leaving a gap in their defenses. Jake cursed under his breath, signaling for Ryan and Emma to fall back. "This isn't working," Ryan yelled, ducking behind cover as shrapnel rained down around them. "We can't keep this up forever. We don't have a choice," Jake replied, reloading his weapon. Every fiber of his being screamed to retreat, to save himself and the others. But retreating meant abandoning the colony, and that was something he couldn't bring himself to do. Emma stayed near the generator, frantically working to restart the damaged turret. Her hands trembled as she fumbled with the tools, tears streaming down her face. She knew what was at stake. If the turrets failed, the colony would fall and everyone inside would perish. The battle raged on. The odds stacked heavily against them. Jake fired until his rifle clicked empty, then switched to a sidearm. Around him, the defenders fought valiantly, their faces etched with determination and despair. For every Valith they destroyed, two more took its place, and then, just as hope seemed utterly lost, a new sound filled the air, a deep, resonant hum that shook the ground beneath their feet. Jake looked up, squinting into the sky. Through the smoke and chaos, something massive descended from the heavens. Reinforcements, or another nightmare. Whatever it was, it changed everything. The massive shape descending from the sky loomed larger with each passing second. Its silhouette blocked out the stars, casting an eerie shadow over the battlefield. Jake lowered his weapon slightly, his eyes fixed on the object as it broke through the thick clouds of smoke and ash. For a moment, everyone froze, humans and Valith, alike staring at the newcomer. Emma stopped working on the generator, her hands trembling as she looked up. "What? What is that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the chaos. Ryan stepped closer to Jake, his knife still clutched tightly in one hand. "Could be another attack," he muttered, his tone laced with suspicion. "Or maybe it's something worse." Jake didn't respond immediately. He squinted, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The object wasn't like the sleek, angular designs of the Valith machines. Instead, it had a more familiar look, smooth curves, glowing blue lights along its edges, and markings that seemed almost human. A ship, but not just any ship, was enormous, far bigger than anything they'd ever seen before. As the vessel hovered above the battlefield, a deafening hum filled the air. Then, without warning, beams of light shot downward, illuminating patches of the ground. The Valith reacted instantly, their mechanical bodies jerking into defensive positions. Some of them began retreating, while others charged toward the source of the disturbance. Jake raised his rifle again, unsure whether to shoot or wait. "Hold your fire," he shouted to the defenders. "We don't know who or what that is yet." The ship descended further, finally coming to a stop just above the colony's perimeter. From its underside, smaller craft detached and began gliding toward the surface. These ships were shaped like arrows, sleek and fast, with faintly glowing engines. They landed smoothly, kicking up clouds of dust as their hatches opened. Out stepped figures clad in polished armor, their helmets gleaming under the dim light. Each figure carried advanced weapons, their movements precise and calculated. At first glance, they looked humanoid, but it was impossible to tell if they were truly human or some kind of synthetic beings. One of them stepped forward, removing their helmet to reveal a face that sent a wave of relief crashing over Jake. It was a woman, her sharp features framed by short brown hair. Her uniform bore insignias, Jake recognized immediately the emblem of Earth's United Defense Forces. She scanned the area quickly, her gaze landing on Jake. Without hesitation, she approached him, her boots crunching against the debris-strewn ground. Commander Laura Hayes. She introduced herself, her voice calm but authoritative. Earth Fleet, we're here to assist. Jake stared at her for a moment, too stunned to speak. Relief washed over him, followed by a flood of questions. How had they found them? Why now? And where had they been all this time? We weren't sure anyone would come, Emma said, stepping forward. Her voice cracked slightly, betraying her emotions. We thought we were alone. Laura nodded, her expression softening. You're not alone anymore. We've been tracking the Valeth activity for weeks. It took longer than expected to reach you, but we're here now. Ryan crossed his arms, his skepticism plain to see. Took you long enough, he muttered under his breath. Where were you when we needed you most? Laura turned to him, her eyes narrowing slightly. We've been fighting our own battles, across multiple fronts. Believe me, no one wanted to get here sooner than we did. Her tone left no room for argument, and Ryan fell silent, though his scowl remained. Jake finally found his voice. We're grateful for your help, Commander, but we're outnumbered and outgunned. Can you turn this around? Laura smiled faintly, a hint of determination in her eyes. That's why we brought the fleet. Trust me, we'll handle the Valeth. In the meantime, I need a status report. What's your current situation? Jake gestured toward the damaged defenses. Our turrets are barely holding, supplies are low, and we've lost too many people already. If you hadn't shown up. He let the sentence trail off, unwilling to finish it. Laura nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. Understood. My team will secure the perimeter and reinforce your defenses. You focus on keeping your people safe. With that, she signaled to her soldiers, who spread out efficiently. Some moved to repair the damaged turrets, while others set up portable barriers and deployed drones to scout the area. Within minutes, the tide of the battle began to shift. The Valeth, caught off guard by the sudden arrival of reinforcements, faltered in their advance. Emma watched in awe as the newcomers worked. They're incredible, she murmured. I've never seen tech like this. Jake couldn't help but agree. The Earth Fleet's equipment was far beyond anything the colony had access to. Their weapons were more powerful, their armor impenetrable, and their coordination flawless. It was clear they had spent years preparing for a fight like this, but even as hope surged among the survivors, doubts lingered. Ryan wandered off to check on the injured, muttering about how fleeting this newfound optimism might be. Jake knew the man had a point. They'd been betrayed by false promises before, and relying on outsiders, even ones claiming to represent Earth, was risky. Still, Jake allowed himself a small measure of relief. For the first time in weeks, they had a real chance. As he watched the Earth Fleet soldiers take control of the battlefield, he felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. Maybe, just maybe, they could survive this after all. Laura returned to Jake after issuing orders to her team. We'll hold the line here, she assured him. But I need your people to prepare for evacuation if necessary. This colony isn't defensible in its current state. Jake nodded grimly. Understood. We'll do whatever it takes. As the night wore on, the battle continued, but the momentum had shifted. The Valeth pressed forward, but their numbers dwindled under the relentless assault of the Earth Fleet. Explosions lit up the horizon as the invaders' forces were systematically dismantled. The defenders cheered with every victory, their spirits buoyed by the presence of their unexpected allies. Yet amid the chaos, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The Valeth wouldn't give up easily, and Earth's fleet had arrived, battered and worn from their journey. Whatever lay ahead, it was clear the fight was far from over. For now, though, they had a reprieve, a chance to regroup and rebuild. And for the first time in what felt like forever, Jake dared to believe that survival wasn't just a distant dream. It was possible. The arrival of Commander Laura Hayes and her fleet brought a spark of hope to the colony. But not everyone shared the same optimism. Ryan Cole stood near the edge of the battlefield, watching as the Earth Fleet soldiers worked tirelessly to reinforce the defenses. His arms were crossed tightly over his chest, and his jaw was clenched. He didn't trust them, not fully. Jake noticed Ryan's brooding expression and walked over, his rifle slung across his shoulder. "You've got something to say, Ryan. Spit it out." Ryan glanced at him, his dark eyes narrowing. "I'm just saying we shouldn't put all our eggs in their basket. What happens if they pull out? Or worse, what if they fail? We'll be left in worse shape than before." Jake sighed, running a hand through his hair. "They're here now, Ryan. They're helping us hold the line. Isn't that enough?" "No, it's not enough," Ryan snapped, his voice rising slightly. "We don't know these people. Sure, they wear Earth's insignia, but who's to say they won't leave us high and dry once the Valith are gone? Trust me, Jake, I've seen this kind of thing before. Help comes with strings attached." Jake frowned, unsure how to respond. Part of him understood Ryan's concerns. The man had been burned too many times in the past, by leaders, by allies, by promises that turned out to be lies. But right now, they didn't have the luxury of skepticism. "Look, I get it. You've got reasons to doubt them, but we don't have a choice. If we don't work with them, we're finished." Ryan shook his head, stepping closer. "And what about the people who don't want to stay and fight? What about those who think staying here is a death sentence? Shouldn't they have a say in what happens next?" Before Jake could answer, Emma approached, her face flushed from exhaustion. She'd been working nonstop to stabilize the colony's power systems, and it showed. "Guys, we don't have time for this. Every second we waste arguing is another second the Valith use to regroup." Ryan shot her a glare. "Easy for you to say, Emma. You're happy to sit back and let Earth's golden soldiers take charge. But some of us aren't ready to roll over and play nice." Emma bristled, her hands balling into fists. "That's not fair, Ryan. I'm doing everything I can to keep this place running. If you've got a better idea, I'm all ears." Ryan opened his mouth to retort, but Jake stepped between them, raising his hands. "Enough, both of you. We're on the same side, remember? Let's focus on surviving tonight before we start tearing each other apart." For a moment, neither Ryan nor Emma said anything. The tension hung heavy in the air, broken only by the distant hum of machinery and the occasional crackle of gunfire. Finally, Ryan exhaled sharply and turned away. "Fine, do what you want, but don't come crying to me when this blows up in your face." He stalked off, disappearing into the shadows near the medical tent. Emma watched him go, her shoulders sagging. "He's going to cause trouble, isn't he?" Jake nodded grimly. "Probably. But we'll deal with it later. Right now, we need to stick together." Later that night, Ryan gathered a small group of colonists near the outskirts of the settlement. Most of them were civilians, people who had lost family members or homes during the Valith attacks. Their faces were gaunt, their eyes hollow with fear and fatigue. Ryan stood in front of them, his voice low but urgent. "We can't stay here," he told them. "This place is a death trap. The Valith will keep coming, and even Earth's shiny fleet can't stop them forever. If we stay, we die. It's that simple." One of the colonists, a young woman named Lisa, spoke up hesitantly. "But where would we go? There's nothing out there but wilderness and more available." Ryan shook his head. "There are shelters deeper inland. Caves, abandoned bunkers, places they won't find us. We grab what supplies we can and move fast. No fanfare, no goodbyes, just survival." Another man, older and grizzled, frowned. "What about Jake and the others? They're counting on us to help defend the colony. They're fools. Ryan said bluntly. Jake's too busy playing hero to see the bigger picture. In Earth's fleet, they'll leave us behind the second things get tough. Trust me, if we stay, we're dead. The group exchanged uneasy glances. Some looked convinced, while others seemed hesitant. Lisa bit her lip, glancing toward the heart of the colony, where the battle still raged. What if we're making a mistake? Ryan leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. Staying is the mistake. Leaving gives us a chance, a real one. Are you willing to take it? After a long pause, Lisa nodded slowly. One by one, the others followed suit. Ryan allowed himself a small, satisfied smile. Good. Pack light, and meet me at the south gate in an hour. We move quietly and quickly. Understood. They murmured their agreement and dispersed, melting into the darkness. Ryan lingered for a moment, staring back at the colony. He knew he was risking everything by abandoning the fight, but in his mind, survival came first. Loyalty was a luxury he couldn't afford. Back at the main barricade, Jake patrolled the perimeter, checking on the Earth Fleet soldiers and ensuring their coordination with the defenders remained smooth. Laura joined him, her helmet tucked under one arm. Her sharp eyes scanned the area, taking in every detail. You've done well holding out this long, she said, breaking the silence. Your people are resilient. Jake shrugged modestly. We didn't have much of a choice. Either fight or die. Laura nodded, her expression thoughtful. Still, it's impressive. Not many colonies last this long against the Valith. She paused, then added, though I've noticed some unrest among your group. Any issues I should be aware of? Jake hesitated, debating how much to share. Just disagreements about strategy. Nothing serious. Laura raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. Disagreements can turn into problems if left unchecked. Keep an eye on it, Jake. Unity is key if we're going to win this. Before Jake could respond, Emma rushed over, her face pale. Jake, we've got a problem. Some of the colonists, they're leaving. What? Jake turned to her, his brow furrowing. Who? Where are they going? It's Ryan, Emma explained hurriedly. He's convinced a group to flee the colony. Says staying here is suicide. Jake cursed under his breath, his frustration mounting. Of all the times to pull something like this. Laura stepped forward, her tone firm. Do you want us to stop them? We can send a squad to bring them back. No, Jake said after a moment's hesitation. Let them go. If Ryan thinks he can survive out there, fine. But he's making a big mistake. Emma looked worried. Are you sure? We could use every pair of hands we've got. I'm sure, Jake replied, though his voice lacked conviction. Right now, we need to focus on the people who are willing to stay and fight. We can't force anyone to stay. Laura studied him for a moment, then nodded. Your call. Just make sure it doesn't distract the rest of your team. As Emma and Laura returned to their tasks, Jake stood alone, gazing toward the south gate. He knew Ryan's departure would ripple through the colony, sowing doubt and uncertainty. But there was nothing he could do about it now. All he could do was hope the remaining defenders would hold strong and that Earth's fleet would live up to its promises. In the distance, the sound of gunfire echoed once more, a reminder that the battle was far from over. The Valith weren't done yet. Despite the arrival of Earth's fleet and the reinforcements pouring in, the machines regrouped with terrifying speed. Their glowing red eyes scanned the battlefield, their metallic limbs clicking and clanking as they prepared for another assault. The defenders braced themselves, knowing the next wave would be even fiercer than the last dot. Jake stood near the main barricade, his rifle slung across his shoulder as he surveyed the scene. The colony was a mess. Smoke curled from damaged buildings. The air reeked of burning metal, and the ground was littered with debris. But there was a sense of order now, thanks to Commander Laura Hayes and her soldiers. They had patched up the defenses, deployed advanced turrets, and set up communication systems that allowed everyone to coordinate more effectively. Still, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were just buying time. Emma approached him, her face pale but determined. "We've got a problem," she said, her voice low and urgent. "The power core, it's failing." Jake frowned, glancing toward the generator at the center of the colony. It hummed faintly, its lights flickering. "I thought you fixed it earlier." "I did," Emma replied, frustration creeping into her tone. "But the strain is too much. Every time those turrets fire, it drains the system faster. If we don't stabilize the core soon, everything shuts down, the sensors, the barriers, everything." Jake clenched his jaw. Without power, the colony would be completely exposed. "How long do we have?" "An hour, maybe less," Emma admitted. "And repairing it isn't going to be easy. I'll need help getting close enough to work on it." Before Jake could respond, a loud explosion shook the ground. Both of them turned to see one of the Earth fleet's portable barriers collapse under the weight of an incoming Valith attack. Soldiers scrambled to reinforce the breach, firing volleys of energy blasts at the advancing machines. The battle was intensifying again, and the colony's fragile defenses were starting to buckle. "We can't spare anyone right now," Jake muttered, his mind racing. "Everyone's needed out here." Emma hesitated, then squared her shoulders. "Then I'll go alone. I know the risks, but if the core goes down, we're finished anyway." Jake grabbed her arm before she could leave. "No way, you're not doing this by yourself." A nearby soldier shouted, "Incoming," and both Jake and Emma ducked instinctively as a swarm of smaller Valith drones buzzed overhead, unleashing bursts of plasma fire. The defenders returned fire, their weapons lighting up the night sky. Amid the chaos, Jake spotted Chloe Bennett, the tech specialist who had been working with Emma earlier. She crouched behind a makeshift barricade, her tablet glowing as she hacked into enemy systems. "Chloe," Jake called out, waving her over. When she reached them, he explained the situation quickly. "Emma needs backup to repair the power core. Can you help her?" Chloe glanced at Emma, then back at Jake. "What about my station? I'm monitoring the enemy network. If I leave, we lose that edge." Laura appeared beside them, having overheard the conversation. "I'll assign someone else to monitor the network," she said decisively. "You two focus on the core. We can't afford to lose power." Chloe nodded reluctantly, though her expression betrayed her nerves. "All right, let's do this." The journey to the power core was anything but smooth. Emma led the way, with Chloe following closely behind and Jake bringing up the rear, covering them with his rifle. The path was narrow, winding between crumbling walls and piles of rubble. Shadows danced in the dim light, making it hard to tell friend from foe. As they moved, the sound of combat grew louder. Explosions echoed in the distance, and the occasional scream sent shivers down their spines. Jake kept his finger on the trigger, scanning every corner for threats. He knew the Valith were watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "This way," Emma whispered, pointing to a narrow alley that led to the generator room. They slipped inside, the noise of the battle fading slightly as the heavy doors closed behind them. Inside, the air was thick with heat and the smell of ozone. Sparks flew from exposed wires, and the hum of the power core grew louder the closer they got. Emma knelt beside the massive machine, pulling out her tools. "Okay, here's the plan. Chloe, I need you to reroute some of the auxiliary systems while I stabilize the main grid. Jake, keep an eye out for trouble. If any Valith get in here, we're dead." Chloe nodded, setting her tablet aside and grabbing a cable. Her hands trembled slightly as she worked, but she forced herself to focus. "Got it. Just hurry." Jake positioned himself near the entrance, peering through the narrow slit in the door. Outside, the battle raged on. The defenders fought valiantly, but the Valith seemed endless. Every time one fell, two more took its place. Jake tightened his grip on his rifle, his heart pounding. He knew they couldn't hold out forever. Minutes ticked by agonizingly slowly. Emma cursed under her breath as sparks flew from the console she was working on. "This thing's worse than I thought," she muttered. "It's like trying to patch a sinking ship with duct tape." "Just keep going," Jake urged, keeping his voice steady, despite the tension. "We're running out of time." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from outside. Jake spun around, his rifle raised. Through the slit in the door, he saw a group of Valith drones hovering near the entrance. They hadn't spotted the team yet, but it was only a matter of seconds. "Guys," Jake said, his voice tight with urgency. "We've got company." Emma glanced up briefly, panic flashing in her eyes. "Almost done. Just a few more seconds." Chloe worked faster, her fingers flying over the cables. "I think I've got it. Try flipping the switch." Emma reached for the control panel and flipped the switch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a loud hum, the power core stabilized, its lights blinking steadily. The hum grew stronger, filling the room with a reassuring rhythm. "Yes," Emma exclaimed, relief washing over her face. "We did it." But their celebration was short-lived. The Valith outside had noticed the sudden surge of power. One of the drones fired a blast of plasma, shattering the door and sending shards of metal flying. Jake dove to the side, shouting, "Get down." The three of them scrambled for cover as the drones poured into the room, their glowing eyes locking onto the humans. Jake opened fire, taking down one drone before another took its place. Chloe grabbed a loose pipe and swung it like a bat, striking a drone with surprising force. Emma stayed near the core, using the machinery as cover while trying to keep it safe. "Fall back," Jake shouted, firing another round. "We need reinforcements." As if on cue, a squad of Earthfleet soldiers burst into the room, led by Laura herself. "Hold your positions," she commanded, her weapon blazing as she joined the fray. Within moments, the remaining drones were destroyed, their shattered remains sparking on the floor. Laura turned to Jake, her expression grim. "Status." "The core is stable," Jake replied, breathing heavily. "For now." Laura nodded, though her eyes remained sharp. "Good work. But this isn't over. The Valith are adapting. We need to stay ahead of them." Emma stepped forward, her face smudged with grease, but her eyes shining with determination. "We will. As long as we have each other, and a little luck, we'll make it through." Jake looked at her, then at Chloe and Laura. For the first time in what felt like forever, he believed her. The battle outside the generator room raged on with renewed intensity. The Valith had adapted to Earth's advanced weaponry, their movements becoming faster and more precise. Each strike they delivered was calculated, targeting weak points in the colony's defenses. Despite the arrival of Earth's fleet and the stabilization of the power core, the defenders were still outnumbered and outgunned. Jake emerged from the generator room, his rifle slung over his shoulder as he assessed the situation. Laura stood nearby, issuing orders to her soldiers while scanning the battlefield. Her sharp eyes caught every detail, her calm demeanor masking the urgency of the moment. "We need to push them back," she said firmly. "If we let them regroup, they'll overwhelm us." Jake nodded, stepping closer. "What's the plan?" Laura pointed to a map displayed on a portable holoscreen. It showed the layout of the colony, with glowing markers indicating enemy positions. "Their main forces are concentrated here," she explained, tapping a cluster of red dots near the eastern barricade. "If we can hit them hard enough, we might be able to break their momentum." "And if we fail?" Jake asked, his voice low. Laura hesitated for a moment before responding. "Then we fall back to the central hub and make our last stand there." Her tone left no room for doubt. She wasn't willing to give up yet, but she knew the stakes. Emma appeared at Jake's side, her face flushed from the effort of repairing the power core. "What about the turrets?" "They're holding steady, but they won't last forever under this kind of pressure. We'll have to use them strategically, Laura replied. I'm sending 2 squads to reinforce the eastern line. You and your team will lead the counterattack. Can you do that? Jake glanced at Emma, then back at Laura. We'll do whatever it takes. The counterattack began at dawn. Jake led a small group of defenders, including Emma, Chloe, and several Earthfleet soldiers, toward the eastern barricade. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burning metal. Explosions echoed in the distance, shaking the ground beneath their feet. As they approached the front lines, they could see the Valith advancing a relentless tide of machines, their glowing red eyes piercing through the haze. Stay close, Jake instructed, raising his rifle. We hit them hard and fast. Don't let them flank us. The defenders took position behind the barricade, their weapons trained on the approaching enemy. Laura's reinforcements arrived moments later, setting up additional turrets and deploying drones to scout ahead. The combined force created a formidable barrier, but everyone knew it wouldn't hold indefinitely. Fire! Jake shouted as the first wave of Valith reached the barricade. The defenders unleashed a barrage of bullets and energy blasts, cutting down dozens of machines in seconds. The turrets roared to life, their automated systems locking onto targets with deadly accuracy. For a brief moment, it seemed like they might actually push the Valith back, but the machines adapted quickly. Smaller drones darted between the larger constructs, weaving through the defenders' fire with ease. One of the turrets exploded in a shower of sparks, forcing the defenders to retreat further. Jake cursed under his breath, reloading his weapon as he scanned the chaos around him. Emma crouched beside him, clutching a pistol she'd scavenged earlier. This isn't working, she said, her voice trembling. There are too many. Don't stop, Jake replied, his tone firm. Not until we've pushed them back. Chloe spotted something in the distance, a massive Valith construct moving toward the front lines. Its body was covered in armored plating, and its limbs ended in razor-sharp claws. That thing's heading straight for us, she yelled, pointing. Jake followed her gaze, his stomach sinking. Everyone, focus fire on that thing. Take it down before it reaches the barricade. The defenders redirected their weapons, unleashing everything they had at the towering machine. Bullets ricocheted off its armor, and energy blasts barely dented its surface. It lumbered forward, unstoppable, its claws tearing through the barricade like paper. We're not going to stop it, Emma shouted, panic rising in her voice. Laura appeared suddenly, wielding a heavy plasma cannon. She aimed it at the construct, and fired, the blast hitting it square in the chest. The machine staggered, its armor cracking under the impact. Keep firing, she ordered, reloading the cannon. The defenders obeyed, pouring all their firepower into the damaged machine. Finally, with a deafening roar, the construct collapsed, its body shattering into pieces. The defenders cheered, but their victory was short. Behind the fallen machine, more Valith surged forward, their numbers seemingly endless. As the battle dragged on, casualties mounted. Sam Rivera, a sharpshooter who had been part of the colony since its early days, fell after taking a direct hit from a drone. His death sent a shockwave through the defenders, their resolve wavering. Jake knelt beside Sam's body, closing his eyes briefly before standing up again. There was no time to mourn, not yet. Fall back to the second line, Laura commanded, her voice cutting through the noise. Regroup and prepare for the next wave. The defenders retreated, dragging their wounded with them. The Valith pursued relentlessly, their mechanical bodies unaffected by fatigue or injury. Jake stayed at the rear, covering the retreat until the last possible moment. When he finally joined the others, he found Laura organizing the remaining forces. We can't keep this up, Emma said quietly, her hands shaking as she reloaded her pistol. We're losing too many people. Laura placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We're not done yet. We've got one more card to play. What's that? Jake asked, his voice hoarse from shouting. Laura turned to him, her expression grim but determined. The Eclipse? My flagship has been holding position in orbit, waiting for the right moment to strike. If we can lure the Valeth into a bottleneck, we can call in an orbital bombardment. It'll wipe out their main force. But it's risky. We'll have to clear the area completely before we activate it. Jake exchanged a glance with Emma and Chloe. They all knew what was at stake. If the bombardment missed its mark, it could destroy the colony, along with the Valeth. But if it worked, it might just turn the tide of the battle. We'll do it, Jake said finally, his voice steady despite the weight of the decision. Tell me what you need. Laura nodded, already relaying orders to her troops. We'll create a diversion to draw the Valeth into the eastern sector. Once they're concentrated there, I'll signal the Eclipse. Until then, hold the line at all costs. The plan was set into motion. Jake and his team launched a series of feints, drawing the Valeth deeper into the trap. Explosions rocked the eastern sector as the defenders fought fiercely, buying time for the orbital strike to be prepared. Laura coordinated with the fleet above, ensuring the Eclipse was ready to deliver the final blow as the Valeth converged on the designated area. Jake felt a surge of hope and fear. This was their last chance. If the bombardment failed, there would be nothing left to stop the invaders. Signal the ship, Laura shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. Now, high above the planet, the Eclipse unleashed its payload. Beams of concentrated energy raining down on the Valeth below. The ground shook violently as explosions tore through the eastern sector, obliterating everything in their path. The defenders watched from a safe distance, their faces illuminated by the fiery glow. When the dust settled, the battlefield was eerily quiet. The Valeth forces had been decimated, their once imposing machines reduced to smoldering wreckage. The survivors erupted into cheers, their exhaustion giving way to relief, but Jake knew better than to celebrate too soon. The war wasn't over not yet. Still, for the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to believe that they might actually win.